In the comments for my video about the Kowa SE, someone said that they weren't quite sure how to load film into this camera. So let's check it out. I originally thought that loading film into this camera should be the same as most other cameras. So let's open the back and take a look and see what we find. And so lo and behold, this camera is a bit different. The take-up spool in this camera does not have the traditional slots. It does have a little thumb wheel that you can rotate, but you'll notice that there are no slots like you see in most other cameras. So how do you load film in this camera? Let's take a closer look into this camera and it will then make sense. So on the take-up spool, you're going to see these two little screws. These screws hold a small metal sleeve that surrounds the take-up spool. And so what's different about this is directly opposite these two little screws is the end of the sleeve. And so how you load film in the camera is you don't actually have to pop up your rewind post just yet, but you take your leader and you tuck it under that little metal sleeve. And in this case, I would push it as far as it goes. One thing to note with this camera, a lot of cameras, when they wind the film this way around the take-up spool. The emulsion actually ends up being exposed. Not exposed, but it's facing outward. With this camera, however, you can see that the opposite is true. It simply rolls it around in a more traditional manner, so it doesn't reverse the film. So use your thumb wheel to rotate it till you can just see these two little screws here. Now take your film and slide it under that metal flange, or the end of that metal piece. I would slide it in as far as it would go. Now you can, the next step I would take, insert it into the empty chamber here. Take up some of the slack. Of course, it's not going to take up all the slack, but it will take up some of it. And I would use this thumb wheel to rotate it until it has a pretty good start there. And I think there it's grabbed hold. Now remember, you have your sprocket wheel here, so make sure your sprockets engage the sprocket holes in the film, and you can take up any slack. Now you can close the back. As I mentioned, take up the slack here, and you're going to fire off 2 blanks. When you fire off your 2 blanks, you should see the rewind crank rotate. 1, 2, next one's live. And so you can keep that closed, or you can pop it out for a more visual look at the rewind crank and watch it rotate. See, it's still going to rotate. As long as that rewind crank rotates, then you know that you've loaded the film properly. That's true not only of this camera, but 99% of other film cameras. There are a couple of cameras in which I believe the rewind crank disengages if you fold the handle back in. So always keep that in mind. And that's it. That's how you load this camera with film. Fairly simple to do. A little bit tricky, a little bit different because it doesn't have that slotted take-up spool that you see in most cameras. So if you like this, give me a like or subscribe. And if you have any other questions, just leave them in the chat below or send me an email, contact@camera-talk.net, and I'll see you on the next video.